All right. Next comment we have DW1979 says, I don't understand. Everyone keeps saying that they want something to feel different at low levels or in low level dungeon content. What do you mean though? Like different how? How can still play well in low level dungeons? You don't have to press 5 buttons. You can feel the difference in a dungeon than you're playing to be good as a player versus a not so good player. The pace is different. I don't feel like a dragoon when I play as a samurai. I think Brian nailed it on the head, TBH. Just give everyone their own limit break and then maybe a party LB3. And I don't think jobs can feel particularly homogenous. Other than that, they have the same job to do with their roles.
I think that to play well as a tank, they all feel identical at low level. So, you know, maybe the melees really do feel that different. I'm not your melee guy. But as a tank, at low level, I really don't notice the difference that much. It just doesn't, like at low level. As the level progresses, like, you know, Gunbreaker versus Paladin starts to feel pretty different to me.
Yeah.
But like as time has passed, as we've made sure that everybody has a gap closer, that removes some of that difference. As we make sure that everybody's invuln lasts approximately the same amount of time, especially in casual content, that removes that distance. As we take the AoE that Warrior has and make it a circle, that removes that difference. So it's not about like all jobs are the same exactly, all jobs are different, binary. There's a world where every job is literally different in every way. Nobody has any of the same combos or any of the same functions. That is not where Final Fantasy exists. Then there's a world where basically you just say tank, and then you just go into your glamour dresser and equip a shield or a gunblade or a big old sword, and it's the same skills on the bar regardless. That is not where Final Fantasy exists. But there is a spectrum between those two. Perfectly homogenized, exactly identical, like when you go to the grocery store and you buy one banana and it's basically identical to the other bananas. One might be slightly bigger, slightly smaller. They're effectively all the same banana. And when you get to the register, they charge you the same price. They don't care. And then there's one where they're all totally different, totally bespoke. You're at a little craft fair and every craft is handmade and amazing. There's this whole spectrum in between.
Yeah.
And every time they make changes, where we all start to see an entire class move to having the same range on an ability or the same cooldown on an ability, or this fits in the same spot, or they have, then it feels like we're just sliding ever closer to just playing on a bunch of identical bananas. And like, people don't want that. So I understand that right now we can point and go, well, right now, one is technically a plantain. But if you stand back far enough, there are other people who are like, yeah, but that's the same thing. It's just bigger. So that's where we're having an issue is it's how close are you looking? And we're talking in casual content. When you talk in ultimate content where people are trying to squeak out the last 2%, the difference between the jobs can be fundamentally so big that literally they'll say one class isn't even playable. But when you talk about like day one dungeon content, that's never the case. Every job is capable of clearing dungeons. So I would say that where I struggle is in low-level casual content where there is no metric of playing well versus not playing well. There is no feedback of playing well versus not playing well. And so it is not crazy to think that I go in and I look down at my hotbars and I start pressing buttons and I go, I don't know any difference. I don't know any difference. I don't feel that at any point I can basically put the ranged attack on V where I always put it, and I can put the interrupt on T where I always put it, and I have my 1, 2, 3, which is A, C, and G, and I can where I always put it, and I can navigate most jobs at a level to complete casual content, especially if it's not max level. And that tells me that we're getting closer to the banana side of things. And as they move us to a 2-minute window where everybody's even on the same timings, so I don't feel that the rotation like builds to anything at any different pace than any other job, that just makes it feel even more like I'm playing on a bunch of bananas.
Somebody please clip Chris's banana comment so we can have that somewhere out on the internet, out of context to what he originally said, and then we can forever know Chris is the banana guy. I'll die on this hill. that I would love to see a level sync system rethought of, reintroduced, because one of the things as the game goes to level 100, presumably 110, and whatever extra steps out there, one of the things that for me was always frustrating is at some point running that older content just felt like the job wasn't complete like it used to be. And having that memory, right? One of the things is like, I remember running this in ARR and it felt fine. I remember running this in Heavensward and it felt fine. I remember running this in Stormblood and going like, this is a little bit strange. I remember, Shadowbringers and being like, yeah, like there, you feel like the job's identity. And that's the thing I said, even in ARR, one of the things that was a key difference maker was Paladin. 49 and down, I didn't like that job at all. But as soon as Paladin hit 50, I was like, this actually, like, I understand what they're going for. I understand the identity. And as they presume to add in more skills and take skills away from lower levels and push them forward or reimagine how they work, the game clearly has become a game that is designed at level cap. And there's nothing wrong with that. And obviously what I'm saying, like, I'm not saying it with the idea or the expectation they're going to do this, because the amount of work, the dev time alone would be so massive. I don't know if it's worth it, but that does not mean that my heart wants it any less. That does not mean that I think it could be an interesting way that they could take that content and do something fresh with it, to take it and say, hey, we have all of this content. How do we make it viable? And I don't think the reward structure that they have in place is that and does that, because ultimately you end up seeing people just kind of like burning out, wanting to keep playing, but not finding a reason to do so. I think adding in a leveling experience post level cap would be interesting, as long as it doesn't affect balance, as long as it doesn't give you power, just as a way of saying like, yeah, here's all these different things. So there's a lot of directions that they can go with it. I do think a personal limit break would be a way of bringing in some level of identity to your job, like you have in PvP. But the clear difference is that in PvP, your skills aren't in this case. Like we've talked about how 14 is the premier. It is the model. It is the city on a hill for controller support, because you can do so much with it. And the question ends up being is that what should they do with that, especially as the game continues to have its success and it grows and it goes from there. Any follow-up thoughts there?
I think that this entire conversation is hard to perfect, because the way these jobs feel different for the people who play optimally. So how do you add a game that forces you to play optimally without feeling like it's telling you get good or get out?
Right, because you end up, well, so and then that is so different how it is now. If they did that from step one and it's always been that way, it's much easier to maintain that. But to turn that on, I think that would be disastrous.
I just know that, like, when a game has made me get better, it's because I've failed. My brother, when he did the new Diablo beta, he said, I'm not going to put another skill point in until it kills me. And he literally started a necromancer. He goes, I just want to see how far it'll get me. And he's like, I made it all the way to level 10 with whatever, like, the first little area. He put like 1 or 2 points in, and then he just made it all the way to level 10 with nothing else on the bar. Then he spent all his available points, and then he made it all the way to 20 without putting anything else additional in. And he's like, that's a problem. Like, it should push back more than that. The fact that I just don't even have the points assigned, it should not be possible. Like, that's tuning it so light that people will go, well, it's your fault for not playing better. It's your fault for not wanting to be optimal. It's your fault for not reading your tooltips and deciding to get good. But, like, there needs to be, we paid for a guided experience. That's what you paid for in a video game. This isn't D. You paid to log in and the game to work. And so you expected there to be some pushback, especially in games that aren't real sandboxy. If you log into base vanilla Minecraft and you chop down one tree and go, I don't know what to do, you're in the wrong game. Like, it requires creativity. But Final Fantasy XIV is a very guided experience for people who have to spend their creative energy at work, or they don't like spending creative energy. That's why you play this game. It's on the rails. What do? You just follow the MSQ. Man, it's a great story. Yeah, that's told to you. You don't take part in it. Every quest ends the same way, whether you feel good about that quest or not. It is a guided experience, like watching a television show that you get to walk through. It is a guided experience. So for people to say like, well, it's their fault because they're bad at the game, because I do see that sometimes, that it's like, well, they don't play their job well, and that's why they don't notice the difference.
Well, I guess the community
make them play the job well.
Right. I guess that takes us kind of to maybe a good community question for you guys to kind of think on, and we can revisit this in a future video podcast. Is that like, what incentive structures would we like to see them add that could essentially do that? Because like Chris has pointed out numerous times, when you start stepping into Savage and Ultimate, like the differences become very, very clear. And how do you then incentivize without like punishing? Because if you started all of a sudden saying, yeah, you can't clear this content, like that doesn't, that's not going to benefit the game. That's also that would be a completely different directional shift. So what kind of content, what kind of changes would you like to see that would incentivize players to get better? What systems would you like to see in place? And unfortunately, we don't have time to get into our thoughts. So maybe again, like that would be a great topic for next week. So
is the TLDR more difficulties, like, and not at the trial level, that's handled. Not at the raid level, that's handled. A lot of this comes down to, a lot of people don't want to learn inside of an 8-man where they can get 7 other people killed. The fact that when I go through the story mode, it doesn't cause me to go back and like, I don't like reading, so I'm not going to read my tooltips unless I have to. So kill me. Like that's the answer. And like, I will play it on hard mode. You guys saw me do it with Destiny 2. When I streamed me playing through Destiny 2, like, I want to fail. I put it on their like expert, hard, challenge, whatever they want to call it mode. Kill me. Like that's the answer. When I went through New World in these expeditions, kill me. I'm a lot better at New World in the expeditions now because they kill me. And I think there should be a lower difficulty for the people that aren't ready to make that jump, but leave the higher difficulty as well. And so like, I think that's the answer, giving people a progression path. Like, I don't think it's right to say like, well, everything starts at college level. There is no high school in our game. That's stupid. But saying like, well, in our game, you graduate at 4th grade. And you're like, well, what if I want something higher? Well, just go out and teach yourself. It's like that. There's a reason we have higher level educations than 4th grade. Like there's a reason the education system keeps going, because there are people that are like, I want to get better. I don't know how. Can you teach me that? So like having harder modes for story and narrative and single player encounters is the answer. These kind of new game plus in my mind is the clear way to start allowing me to learn how your game mechanics work in a way that, because saying like, well, you should just go find 7 strangers and then tell them you're terrible and then get them killed for 2 hours. I absolutely understand why people are afraid to do that.
Yeah, especially in an established game. It's such a different take when the game's brand new and everybody's learning. You see this happen in 14 all the time, where on launch day, a content day, yeah, though there's going to be some jerk off that's like, why can't y'all do this thing? And it's only been out for 10 seconds. But outside of that, like exception, which everybody's like, whatever, dude, like calm down, it's day one. But then essentially like that's the excitement of a new MMO, and that MMO hype is that there's nobody out there. There's no right or wrong. Everybody's still trying to figure out the questions to ask. Now, guys, thank you so much for letting me crash in over here on the Twitch side of things. If you guys are on the YouTube side of things, thank you guys so much for the love. Be sure that if you guys like these podcasts, give them some love over on YouTube, that like button, leave a comment, especially into the questions that we ask, as that's a great way for us sourcing that. Also, be sure to subscribe so you guys can check out all the different videos.